were all just really proud and excited for one another. I just remember everybody kind of, jumping back into that email chain and going like, oh my God, we made something really great. Like, wow. Because that just doesn't happen every day. I mean, of course, you always go into things with the best intentions. And sometimes you get really lucky and you see it and you go, oh my God, I'm a part of something really special. And that was one of these instances. So we all got to kind of share in that celebration together of like, wow, whatever happens, whoever sees it, we know we made something really cool. And it's extra special knowing that we made something really cool as an extension of something that we were already really proud of. We didn't sully it in any way. We only kind of took it to another place that we also love. So that was really great.
I'm so excited to be having this conversation with you. I am like a day one Scott Pilgrim fan. I have a Ramona Flowers clock just like out of view over here. And so I feel like we have to start with Scott Pilgrim. It is so rare for an actor to get to revisit a character, a beloved character like this one, and in really a completely different form. So can you talk us through how that came about? I believe Edgar said he sent everyone an email as kind of the beginning of it.
Yeah, I think, it was connected to an email chain that had been going for a decade. And I think it had been dormant for like 9 years or something like that. So it was, I think it was part of that chain. I don't think it was the thing that got it restarted. I think was Michael one day just kind of kicking it off by revisiting this 9-year-old text chain. And that kind of got us all talking again. And I think by that point, the ball had started rolling behind the scenes on the series. And so it was kind of fortuitous that we were all in connection with each other and we were all sort of reminded how much fun it was to be in connection with one another. Yeah, he was like, hey, so I think we're going to do this anime. Who's in? And we all immediately jumped on board.
And then at what point did you learn, was it from Brian Lee O'Malley, who is the writer of the graphic novels? He and Ben David Grabinski were the co-showrunners. At what point did they get in touch with you, or did you learn how much of a difference and how much bigger of a role Ramona was going to have this time around? What was your reaction to that?
No, I don't remember there being a specific conversation about it. It all kind of happened so fast. I got the scripts and then I was recording and it was sort of, I didn't really have time to kind of analyze it until we were recording it. And then it kind of washed over me what a sort of special thing it was to get to spend so much more time with her and how cool it was from a sort of series and character perspective as well. So it was just amazing on so many different levels. It was great to get to spend more time with that character, Ramona, from the books and from the film, but also personally to get to spend more time with her was really special. To kind of fill her in a little bit more and give her a few more shades and get to kind of, see who she is as a person in a broader way.
Yeah. And then you've done some voiceover acting before, right?
Very, very little. Mostly, like ADR, that kind of thing. So this was pretty new territory for me to be kind of just lending my voice to something.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask about kind of expanding that to, even though I knew you had done it before, to have to do so much more, just the volume of it, to stick with one character, again, a character you've played before. What were kind of the challenges of that, especially as someone who's used to, being on screen, which I think a lot of our actors who are on this call can relate.
I think initially it felt a bit challenging. I was sort of, I was trying to figure out how to revisit this character that I've played before and also bring new shades to her without turning her into a totally new person. So initially it was a bit kind of like, how am I going to do that? But over time, it just became incredibly natural. And I was lucky to have such great collaborators who just kind of let it be very real. At first, I didn't know, like, are we going to have to really punch up the vocals? Is it going to have to be more stylized? And they just kind of wanted it to be really natural and real, like we were in a film. So it was interesting, the subtleties of knowing, okay, I've got to make sure this translates with only my voice. I can't bring my expression to it. So there were definitely differences that I was learning as I was going on how to kind of turn certain things up and down with my vocal performance that I hadn't really had to think about before. But I found it to be a really fun and kind of a liberating challenge in a way, to not have to worry about anything else. It's just all about the voice and what you can express with that.
Yeah, I'd love to dig into that a little bit deeper since, this is somewhere that we can talk kind of about process and the nitty-gritty of it. Were there things that you did to manipulate your own vocals? Were you doing did you do like the actions in the booth to kind of help you out? I know that helps for a lot of actors.
Yes, I always have to do some sort of, if I'm doing something physical on the screen when I'm recording, I feel like I've got to do something physical or else it always feels like it sounds so flat. But it's that tricky thing of you can't really make any noise with your body. So you're trying to do something physical without making any noise except just through your vocals. So there's a bit of a dance to that. But yeah, I always have to do some sort of kicking and punching the air and in order to get those grunts to come out naturally. And there was quite a lot of that in this. So you just kind of have to forget about the fact that you look ridiculous because, you're doing these sort of half moves like, ugh. It's just like you just have to forget that anyone might be looking at you and just go for it.
Was there anything that you learned about yourself as a performer during that process? Like you mentioned the grunts and stuff that came out. Is that something that you were more aware of after hearing, just the grunts isolated?
Oh, for sure. And there's something really specific about the sounds, the fight sounds in an anime. And Brian and Ben David and Abel kind of wanted a little bit of that specific sound, which to me was something I've certainly never done before. I'm familiar with seeing it, but I'd never actually tried to make my voice match those sounds. So I just kind of had to trust them because they knew the broader picture of what they were creating. So sometimes they had to get really specific to me and just go like, no, make it sound like this. And I would just go like, I'm in your hands. I will try and replicate that.
And what did the recording process look like in terms of, working with your co-stars? Because VO can be very isolating, but sometimes people get in the booth at the same time or have similar sessions.
Yeah, we weren't able to do that. I mean, I think it was such a feat just getting us all involved to begin with, because it's such a big cast and everyone that was in different countries filming different things and basically gave their time whenever they could. So just the fact that they were able to schedule it and make it happen at all is amazing. So occasionally I got to hear the voices that had already been recorded. So I had some scenes that were Kieran had already recorded or May had already recorded, or I got to hear a little bit of Michael. So that was just great to get to hear them and be reminded of how much fun it was to work with all of them and bring that kind of energy to it.
And then how did you approach live action Ramona versus animated Ramona? As an actor, do you treat them as the same character, or are you coming at this, especially after, over a decade away, thinking like this is a new character?
I mean, I think I treated her as the same, but with my current perspective, which has changed since I was 24 years old. I mean, my perspective on the character has grown, and that was the amazing thing about this particular project was because the character grows so much, literally we get to see different versions of her in different time periods of her life, including a future one where she's closer to the age that I am now. And so I got to kind of bring all of that perspective to it. And that was sort of unexpectedly profound to get to do that just on a personal level, just to kind of see this character that I played when I was very young and to get to bring her to a different place in her life and to get to bring all of the kind of wisdom that comes from growing up to that was really special.
Absolutely. And I think the lens of the culture that's watching her has changed so much.
Absolutely.
In that time too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Spot on. Yeah.
And then, I guess I should have said this earlier, but light spoilers for the series and for A Gentleman in Moscow, but you can watch both of the shows. Scott Pilgrim came out in November. What are we all doing? So like you said, you get to play adult Ramona as well. And then it is such a departure from the film, even from a lot of what's in the novels. How do you feel looking at it as kind of its own piece of the Scott Pilgrim, I guess, like extended universe now?
Yeah, I just think it's this beautiful collaboration of artists from so many different backgrounds making something really epic and cool, which in a way is kind of what every iteration of this story has been, from the graphic novels, which was more of a kind of a solo venture for Brian Lee O'Malley, the creator. But then taking that and making that into this huge film, and now making something that is kind of captures that indie spirit again, but also kind of blows it up in this totally new and unexpected way. I just feel really proud that I got to be a part of it because I got to be a part of something that I don't normally get to experience with these artists, um, who are just making something on a level that's so kind of far from my understanding, and I get to just be one piece of the puzzle. It's really, yeah, it's been an amazing process.
Yeah, and to that end, the difference with animation is obviously like you aren't even able to like watch the footage you recorded technically, right? Or it's not you on screen.
Right.
And again, as a performer, like does it feel as if you're watching when you're watching the finished product that there's more of a layer between you and the art, or is it just a different kind of connection? I'm really curious about that.
Yeah, I think I guess there's more surprise to it. I mean, I've certainly done films that feel like that, to an extent as well, where you're doing a lot of green screen or you don't really know what's going to be around you or what it's going to look like. But I think with this, there were so many layers to it, that were unexpected to me in terms of the way it was going to make you feel, because every layer of it, from the animation to the music, the score, the way that they can edit it and take breaths and pauses and create something with our voices that wasn't there in the room at all. Obviously I was a piece of that. My voice was a very important piece of that. But there's so much involved that added to the kind of the connection, the emotional connection of it, that doesn't really rely so much on the actors because there's just so many pieces of that puzzle that were just as important to that part. And of course, that's true for films as well. But I think there's something about anime that has its own emotion, it has its own kind of beauty, that was new to me, and I loved being a part of it.
And then I have to come back to that text or email chain, I guess, because none of you got to see the finished product until it was released. What was the kind of collective response, or some of the things that even stood out to you about watching, your co-stars' performances that you weren't aware of?
We were all just really proud and excited for one another. I just remember everybody kind of, jumping back into that email chain and going like, "Oh my God, we made something really great!" Like, wow, because that just doesn't happen every day. I mean, of course, you always go into things with the best intentions, and sometimes you get really lucky and you see it and you go, "Oh my God, I'm a part of something really special." And that was one of these instances. So we all got to kind of share in that celebration together of like, wow, whatever happens, whoever sees it, we know we made something really cool. And it's extra special knowing that we made something really cool as an extension of something that we were already really proud of. We didn't sully it in any way. We only kind of took it to another place that we also love. So that was really great.
Yeah, and well, to follow up on that, I think there's a lot of hesitation around revisiting beloved works, especially because more and more people are doing it right now. You're someone who was kind of tense, and then peripherally jumping into the superhero game or into Star Wars, like a big franchise like that. So I have to imagine that initially there might have been some sort of hesitation about jumping back in, even though, clearly you all trusted Edgar and Brian and Ben David with the work.
Yeah, I don't think any of us had any hesitation on this one, just because, yeah, it's such a talented group that you kind of can't go wrong, really. Certainly, I had no idea they would come up with something so smart and inventive and brilliant. I don't think I expected that, and I think I sort of expected that it would just be fun, and it would be fun for the fans of the movie to get to have another chapter. I definitely didn't expect it to kind of connect on such a deep level with me personally, let alone, such a big audience. So that's just been a huge kind of blessing that we get to be a part of something that became so special to all of us.
Yeah, and this time around, Ramona gets to be a stunt woman, which is so cool. Is that a nod to your like action star pipeline a little bit?
I would love it if it was. I never asked them, if that was any inspiration, but I did love, there were definitely moments when I was recording, several times where I thought, there's layers to it that we're kind of commenting on ourselves or a film within the film and all of that, which is really in the show. But, there's a few lines in there where I'm kind of thinking, oh, God, is this taken from real life? But we didn't really press each other on any of that stuff. I don't know. There was just something really lovely about just coming in and recording it and having this shared history between Brian and myself and Ben David as well. I've known Ben David since we made Scott Pilgrim. He's kind of been in that sort of friend group for that long. So we all really know each other's history, and that just was kind of just alive and in the room, which was really great.
I did want to, we are going to switch gears to Gentlemen in Moscow, but on that end, I think that even for Scott Pilgrim, like both of these projects that we were talking about today, Scott Pilgrim Takes Off and A Gentleman in Moscow, are not really action projects. And not to say that you have at all pigeonholed yourself as an actor, because I don't think you have, but you have done a lot of really cool, interesting action. You've done 10 Cloverfield Lane, you've done, like I mentioned, Star Wars, and then I don't know. It's interesting that these are, again, a departure in such different ways. You pick such interesting roles. So I guess before we jump into the Showtime Limited series, can you talk a little bit about the process of how you choose roles, how roles choose you, dare I say?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's always a little bit of both. I don't know. It's such a tricky thing to answer because it's changing all the time. What I'm gravitating to and what feels right to me in my bones is always changing. And I definitely still love action. I still feel like a really kind of physical actor, but I don't really know if that's a road I'm going to go down as like a career path. I never really think in that kind of way. I just kind of take roles as they come to me, and when they feel right, they feel right. It's such a vague answer, but that is kind of how it feels. Is I'm often I go through long periods of stretches of feeling a little bit uninspired and going, I don't really know what I want to do next. I don't really know what it's going to be. I don't really have any idea. And then a script will just come in and I'll just be like, oh, I really want to do this. And I really, either they're offering it to me or I'm saying I really want to go out and try and get them to offer this to me. But that's, it just happens when it happens, and I can't force it, at least at the stage that I'm at now. I kind of I bide my time until the right thing comes along.
It does seem like it's at least very, very strikingly character-driven action.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I just always want to be doing something fun, and the physicality is a huge part of that. And just being active, whether it's somebody who's just like incredibly active in terms of how much they're thinking or how much their brain is kind of turned on, or they're active in a more literal sense. I have a hard time playing people who are really passive. I just really like people who are going for something, trying for something, trying to overcome something. And the physical part of that is a lot of fun.
And I have to imagine that being active, staying active while performing comes from your background as a dancer as well, right?
Yeah, I think that's certainly part of why that element is part of how I express myself, or how I enjoy expressing myself. I started dancing when I was really, really young, and haven't done it in a long time, but it's still in there somewhere. And I think it's just one of those things, when it's drilled into you at a young enough age, it never really leaves you.
Well, and with that, and with singing, I think a lot of actors tend to kind of take on these new skills. Once they become actors and performers, they're like, let me expand my toolkit. But I don't think everyone necessarily realizes how hand in hand it all goes. And the fact that you trained as a dancer first makes a huge difference coming into these types of fight choreography. Like, there's a reason to describe it that way.
That's what it feels like. It absolutely feels like learning a dance. And it's a different way of moving, and some things you have to unlearn. I had to kind of unlearn a lot of my ballet training, because you don't really want to look like a ballerina when you're trying to be a believable assassin and things like that. But absolutely sort of picking up the steps, remembering them, and even just the discipline of acting and everything else that goes with it. It's a lot of it is a discipline. And I think when you're trained as a dancer, you can't not be kind of a disciplined performer in that way. So I'm grateful for that background, for sure.
So coming to A Gentleman in Moscow, casting for this, you've been a little bit coy about it, but your husband was involved before you were,
Yeah.
correct?
Yes, he was attached and reading the novel and sort of giving me these little coy remarks here and there about there being potentially a good female role in it. So he was piquing my interest for sure.
And the series, just for everyone who, if you haven't checked it out, in that Ewan McGregor plays a man named Alexander, who is essentially he's under house arrest in a hotel in Moscow. And then the series covers like decades in his life. You play the lovely actor Anna, who ends up being a frequent visitor, and then eventually his friend situationship, I guess,
Yeah,
lover, partner, all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it starts out in this really kind of fun, it's the 1920s and my character is a film star and she's very brash and bold and kind of acts on her own desires. And she, in that moment she sees the Count sort of desires him, but then kind of plays with him and toys with him for years and years. And over the course of the series, their relationship really deepens into like a true partnership. But it takes a long time to do that. So it was lovely to get to take the time to slowly build that together. It was great.
Yeah, and then of course it is, your first time acting with your husband, at least since he became your husband, even though you've been in a lot of the same worlds and films and not always overlap, not since Fargo, I believe, right? Which was
That's right, yeah.
What was it like
we had
now in such a lived-in relationship?
Just lovely. It would be easy regardless because he's such a great actor. He's very, very easy to act with and we love to act with one another. But there's another layer of ease about it when you're performing with someone who is your partner, because there's no question that you're going to be comfortable, you're going to be open, at least in my experience. And that's what you're always hoping for with your scene partner, is that you can just you can be vulnerable, you can be raw, you can be whatever is needed for the moment, and there's no judgment. So that's just like one of the great things about getting to work together is it's so easy.
I mean, as a viewer, it is a delight to see the two of you on screen. The chemistry is, it doesn't always translate for a real life relationship, but I'm feeling it in this one.
Oh, good. I appreciate that. Yeah, I hope that people feel that way, because we'd like to be able to keep doing it. And, you can only keep doing it if it works, really. And it feels like it does to us. And we're very, very like-minded in terms of the projects we like and also in terms of the way we like to work. So it just feels very natural for us to do it.
I couldn't help noticing while watching this, or also reading some of your interviews around the project, that Anna kind of parallels Mary in some ways. Maybe I'm stretching.
Okay.
She's an actress and people kind of try to put her in a box. They tend to underestimate her. It's, I guess, broadly many actresses.
Right.
And she has these very strong convictions and passions. And what was it like to bring that, like you said, she has this begrudging at first relationship with Alexander, but at the same time, she's also having in a very interesting moment in her career and in how she's perceived publicly as an actor and as a woman.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting because I related to a lot of it in from my own kind of modern lens. Obviously, what Anna's going through in the story is very specific to that time period as well. But Ben Vanstone and Sam are the kind of creators of the show and director. They did such an amazing job of making it feel really current and making it resonate with me personally when I was reading the scripts, particularly as we get further into the episodes and there's a little bit more focus on Anna's career and what she's going through with that. And we get to kind of see her grapple with how it's changing, and it changes in lots of ways, from being someone who's very much adored to someone who's somewhat tossed aside and having to really kind of keep her career going in some way. And again, that's something I really love to play, or people who just keep finding a way forward. And she's very much that, she keeps finding a way to kind of continue to be an artist and continue to do what she loves, even if the public perception of her is constantly shifting and changing. She still just kind of keeps carrying on. And I thought that was really lovely.
I do have to shout out the exquisite costuming in this series for you, particular from the very first dress. It is just like jaw-dropping. And what was that like, especially in terms of helping you tap into the character? You know, when we think about these elements, like even the blonde hair or like, you know, Ramona's wigs and all of that. How does that just help you get into the right headspace?
It makes a huge difference for me. I think, there's always that part of you, at least for me, when you're starting a project and you've kind of got everything, you think you've got it all there, and then you're like, oh God, it's not there yet. I don't really know who she is yet. And so much of all those elements coming into play are what like finally click it over and you go, oh God, okay, now there she is, and the hair and the makeup and the costumes and the shoes and the environment, all of that plays such an important role to making it suddenly feel real and true. And that was amazing to get to play a character who gets to luxuriate in that kind of wardrobe and all of that is you don't get to do it very often. So it was wonderful.
Do you have any advice, I guess, for SAG-AFTRA members about kind of that in between, though, of, you get the pages, you start to think about the character. There's a long time before you're necessarily on set in the full costume. So are there any techniques that you have that help you get there in between?
It's a really good question. It definitely depends on the role, I think. I usually try and distill things down to something really simple in terms of what the character is trying to do or what their kind of basic needs are. And I try to kind of hold on to that or not forget about it too much in between, when you're waiting around and sitting around. And, so if a character is going through a lot emotionally, I'm not someone who's necessarily method and trying to, sit and cry in my trailer for 2 hours, but I do try and not let go of it completely. So I think that's part of it for me. And part of that is I'm always trying to keep in a very kind of calm state. So that way I can move in and out of, trying to be professional with the people that I'm working with off camera, but also moving into being this person when the camera's rolling. So I try to stay in a pretty kind of centered, calm place so that I'm not like flip-flopping too far into too many different kind of emotions.
That's a really good answer. This will be my final question because we have to wrap up. I should ask something like broad and sweeping about these shows and all of your roles. Instead, I have to ask about shooting only interiors for Gentlemen in Moscow, pretty much, and that too the same interior because it is all in the hotel, which has to be so challenging as a performer.
We were really lucky on this one because the hotel was built so magnificently. It was huge. The hallways really connected to rooms and the restaurant really connected to the lobby and you could go up and down stairs and it just felt so real, like you were really in this place from the book that just, came to life. So I think, in maybe a different setting, doing 6 months or so of that would be a little bit much, but I couldn't imagine a more beautiful set to be in every day. It was really, really amazing. And I just was in awe of the art department and everyone, the designers, because they really, they made it a place that you want to be in as a viewer and as an actor.
Definitely. It looks so rich on camera. Well, thank you so much, Mary, for talking to me. To everyone else here, you can watch Scott Pilgrim Takes Off on Netflix. You can watch A Gentleman in Moscow on Paramount Plus with Showtime. And on behalf of the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, I want to thank you, Mary, for sharing your experiences, your process, and your craft with your fellow performers today.
Thank you so much. Nice to talk to you.